Hey everybody, Bear vs. Wolf here. Thanks for tuning in. This video is about Efnote drums and specifically the idea of machine gunning, which is basically when you have a snare or any drum, the sample can only output so many different layers. So here we go, we have a roll. Some people start to think that sounds pretty unnatural because it's basically just a straight output here. And what you have happening is the module can only output so many samples, right? So I'm going to take a little video here and show you what I'm talking about. So now you can see over on the module these little bars at the top. If I hit softly, they're very low. And as I start to hit harder, they're going up and up and up and up. And then what I'm going to be adjusting today here is the sensitivity right there. That's the head. And then sensitivity B is the rim shot. And then C is the cross stick. I'm not really going to mess with it today, but this deal. And then the curve here. Let me show you how that works. So now you have a curve that can go up, inverse, and then you have linear, which is where it's set on, and then inverse, or sorry, like a normal logarithmic or exponential curve there. All right, all that is to say, that's enough of the B-roll. Here we go. So here is the deal with this stuff. So you have, if I hit softer, the drum's softer, right? And as I hit louder, there's a certain amount of volume that gets output. And when you start to roll, it eventually starts to sort of settle in on one sample to output, basically. So what I'm going to try here is playing with the sensitivity first. And what that does is, as I'm hitting the drum softly, if I go down to, say, -10, it goes from -10 to +10, by the way. It was started at 0. Now, I can't really get as much volume out of the drum if I'm hitting hard, but it's real soft. So if I go to +10, now I'm not hitting any harder. I'm hitting the same velocity, essentially, but I'm kind of getting only loud. Basically, that'd be like on a MIDI keyboard when you just turn the velocity sensitivity off, and every time you hit, it's the same volume. It's almost like that. It's much more smushed down, basically like hyper compressed. So what I'm finding is that if you go to like -2, -1, -2, -3, somewhere in there, you have to play with it, and you have a sensitivity for this as well as the rim shot. So now I'm getting a little bit more of a natural feel. I want to be able to get the louds. These are already set that way, by the way, -2 and -3. Or -2, whatever it was. The toms, I mean. So I find that to be a little bit more natural. And you can kind of hear the inconsistencies of the roll now. How some are a little bit softer than others. Right? Where it's not just straight exactly the same. Okay, so that's getting better. Now we're going to check out the curve. So what we started with was linear. Basically, if you get louder by 1, it goes up by 1, right? If you remember your geometry or math class. Okay, so what I found is if you go inverse curve, it basically just mashes everything up and everything's kind of loud again. So we'll go back to linear. Pretty good. I can still get some louds out of it, right? Okay, but if I go to a curve of -1, -2, -3 is a little too much. Now you can hear, hopefully you can hear the drum is soft. I can't get as loud without really smacking the drum. So I kind of took all the top end out of it, right? So here's -2. And what's happening now is instead of being a linear, it's that curve that I showed you, right? So this is a little better. So it's probably, your preference will be whatever your preference is, but, somewhere in the -2, -1, -2, I feel is sorry, I hit the mic there. So now I have all the drums, and the kick drum as well is set at actually +1 sensitivity. But I kind of want those to be loud most of the time. I don't really want, it gets really soft already if I'm just tapping it. So anyways, that's a different topic, but back to the snare. So I found that about -2 for the sensitivity and roughly -1, -2 for the curve. Somewhere in between there, you probably, between -1 or 2, you're going to like. For me, that's about where it is. So right, so now I'm kind of getting those real soft kind of ghost note-y type stuff. It's a little bit more dynamic. I wouldn't say it's like mind-blowing, but I didn't really have a problem with it to begin with. I just made this video because I kept seeing people saying machine gunning over and over again in my videos. I suppose if you're not playing it, it's one of those things where like if you're playing a tube amp or something, that whole feel thing people talk about, you can't really get that if you're just watching. It's the same thing if you're just watching. Maybe you're more perceptive to how flat the machine gunning comes out or something like that. But it is better, there's only so many samples that they're going to be able to output. These modules don't have a ton of storage capacity on them. It's not like it's a gigabyte drive in there that can output like thousands of samples over the snare, whatever it would be. Maybe if Efnote happens to watch this video and they could comment on here how many, what the depth, the bit rate, the bit depth, of the samples is, how many, just how many samples there are that make up a snare sample. If you're looking at the level indicator here, I can make this bar move, I would say in the area of between 10 to 15, maybe 20 times at most. So that tells me it's something like 10 or 15, maybe 20 samples that makes up the snare sound from everything from way down here. And by the way, this snare triggers immensely well. I believe it's 3 zones. This is no knock on F-Zone or anything. This is any electronic kit. You're going to have some bit of this because they're just not putting out thousands of samples to make up a snare sample. You have almost infinite control of a real snare drum, an analog snare drum, a natural snare drum, right? To be this quiet or this loud and everything in between. To digitize that, you're talking about taking a snapshot of every one of those volumes from 0 to infinite, right? So it's just never going to be that, unless you're talking about a brain. You need a MacBook computer potentially to harbor just the samples. And by the way, okay, so that's the line out of the module. And so that's kind of taking me to the next point is it better or the same or worse or whatever if we go to inside of a computer? I'm going to use the drums now to trigger addictive drums. So let me kill that recording and start this recording. So I don't even have to stop. I'm using Luna. If you haven't checked it out, you don't even need to stop the play. That's just a total side note, unrelated here. Really, really badass. You can, in Pro Tools or something, I have to stop the playback, record again. I can input things in and out of record in Luna. I'm using Universal Audio's Luna. So massive thumbs up to Luna for that, or Universal Audio, basically, in Luna. Super, super cool. So I don't have to stop anything. I just record in, record out, boom. It's like you're punching on the fly, in and out. Anyways, not related, but also related if you're in audio. So, okay, so here is the next step of this video, basically. Now, you may have noticed the drums have changed. I'm triggering them via MIDI. The Efnote module has just a little, I don't remember, USB mini, USB micro, something like that, that goes to, I have a little cable that goes straight to USB-C right into the MacBook and can now trigger whichever drums you'd like. I'm using Addictive Drums. This is like their Black Beauty kit. It's a DW kit. I don't remember the specifics. I think it might be a Craviotto snare. It might be a DW snare. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. Sounds fantastic, right? So here's the difference. If I'm... There's a dynamic range. Now, could be fooling myself here, but it does seem like to me... Just want to make sure I'm still recording. It does seem like to me that there is a little bit more. Now, I'm still getting the same bar because the drums, the module is still controlling this, what the outputs are, so to speak. But there are 128 now velocity points, right? For MIDI. Any MIDI instrument has 128 basically points for everything, right? But velocity is now the volume, becomes the volume. So now you would assume that I have 128 versions of the snare. And you can even just put your sticks down and like hear it click on there. So sounds, the snare just sounds incredible. First of all, that's, hats off to Addictive Drums. That snare sounds insane. But it does feel maybe a little bit less compressed. I'm not sure if that comes across on the audio. It seems like there might be a little bit more headroom or a little bit more basically dynamic capability. Again, if XLN or Addictive Drums is watching, how many samples do you use in your snare drums? How many different pictures of the snare basically have you taken? Sounds great. Sounds killer. It's not really about the sounds, but I just want to see if it felt any different. And it does seem a little bit more dynamic. Across them. All right, so that's basically all I wanted to check out in this video. And so to those of you guys who are worried about machine gunning or commenting about it or whatever, take it with a grain of salt, because all these kits have that, right? You're not going to go to Roland and there's not going to be machine gunning. You're not going to go to the Pearl Mimic, whatever. Now, in the Mimic, you can use, I believe, these plugins inside of the Pearl Mimic, so maybe that would make that a little better. But the point is, there are settings to change it. It does get better, for sure. It didn't really even bother me to begin with. The feel is there. I like the way these things felt already, but it is better to go in here and tweak just a little bit these curves and sensitivity knobs and stuff like that. It already feels a little bit better. And there is some... I guess it doesn't feel better, but it maybe feels a little bit closer to reality than the linear curves and the zero sensitivity and all that kind of stuff. So that's it for that. If you have any other questions on this kit, I'm still learning it. I've had it for about a year. I'm about to do a video about, the good things, the bad things, that whole thing, the YouTube deal, 5 things I like about this video. Mostly great stuff. I absolutely love this kit. I'm in an apartment. I have to, practice. I play out professionally and stuff, and so I need to work on tunes in a given week, stuff that needs to be done in a couple of days' notice, whatever. So you can listen all you want. I like to get the muscle memory together, play through the tunes, and having something you can actually do that on in this type of a setting. It's not silent, but it's quiet, and that's getting off topic, but if you're interested in this kit and you're worried about the machine gunning thing, I wouldn't. If it's the right setup for you, the sounds are there, it sounds really good, then you plug it right into your computer with one cable. You could use a MIDI cable. You'd have to have a whole video on that and how you do it, but basically I would say, go for it. These kits are amazing. I don't have a ton of experience with the other Roland side. I played a VAD 3.0 something one time. I don't think the heads were tensioned right. It felt terrible. That's not a knock on Roland. I just think that the drums needed to be tuned. You can use a drum key to tune these heads up to tightness, and this thing had been like sitting around and it was loose, and it didn't feel great. So, take that with a grain of salt as well. But I sort of felt that the Efnote sounds were a little bit more natural sounding to me. And the layout of this kit, I wanted full shells. The Roland drums, you got to go, I don't even know, a couple more grand or at least another grand or something like that to get that. I'm happy with basically everything here. I've thought about maybe upsizing the snare, upsizing the floor tom. Again, this is just for guys who are geeking out about the Efnote drums. It has nothing to do with this video, but if you're interested in these kits, they're badass. They're not paying me anything to say that. It was just kind of the choice I went with. The hi-hat is incredible. That'll be in the good stuff video, but I'm rambling, so that's it for now. So machine gunning, not a problem for me. You can make it better. You can alleviate it. That's the end. Thanks for watching Bear vs. Wolf. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.